December 17th, 1944. 06:45 hours. Somewhere in the frozen hills near the German border. Private First Class Tommy Mitchell crouches behind a snow-covered pine tree, his breath forming white clouds in the bitter morning air. He's been holding this position for 3 hours. His fingers are numb. His feet stopped hurting an hour ago, which he knows is a bad sign. But he doesn't dare move. Somewhere in these trees, there's a German sniper. Mitchell has watched 3 men die this morning. Good men. Friends. Each one dropped by a single shot from a position no one can locate. The fog is too thick. The trees too dense. Every shadow could hide death. Then he sees something strange. 30 yards to his left, a glint of light. Just for a second. Like sun catching on glass. His heart hammers. That's it. That's the German position. He raises his rifle slowly, finger moving to the trigger. A hand grabs his shoulder. Don't shoot, kid. It's Sergeant Daniel Reeves, the battalion's best marksman. He's smiling slightly, which seems insane given the circumstances. That's not a German, Reeves whispers. That's broken glass. And in about 2 minutes, it's going to save your life. This is the story of how one American sniper turned a piece of shattered equipment into the most effective weapon on the battlefield. This is the story of the broken lens trick. And over the next 4 days, it would change everything. Daniel Reeves wasn't supposed to be a soldier. Born March 3rd, 1919, in a one-room cabin outside Missoula, Montana, he grew up in a world where hunting wasn't a sport. It was survival. His father, James Reeves, worked as a logger when work was available, which after 1929 became almost never. His mother died of pneumonia when Daniel was 7. There were 4 children and never enough food. You learn to make the first shot count, his father told him, when he was 8 years old, handing him a battered Winchester rifle that was nearly as tall as the boy himself. We can't afford to waste bullets. 1 shot, 1 kill. That's how we eat. Montana winters are unforgiving. Temperatures drop to 20 below zero. Snow buries the landscape for months. Game becomes scarce, and animals grow cautious. Daniel learned to move through the forest without sound. He learned to read tracks in snow, to understand wind patterns, to calculate distance by instinct. He learned patience, the ability to remain motionless for hours while waiting for a deer to step into the clear. By age 12, he was the family's primary hunter. By 15, he could hit a running rabbit at 200 yards. By 18, he'd killed over 300 animals, deer, elk, rabbits, grouse, and hadn't missed a shot in 2 years. When the war broke out in Europe, Reeves was 22 years old, working as a hunting guide for wealthy tourists from back east. He had no interest in the fighting. Montana felt very far from Germany. But after Pearl Harbor, everything changed. He enlisted on December 15th, 1941, 8 days after the attack. I figured if someone was going to shoot at Americans, he told the recruiting officer, I might as well shoot back. What Reeves didn't know was that the skills he'd learned in the frozen Montana wilderness, patience, precision, the ability to remain invisible, would soon make him one of the most effective snipers the American military had ever produced. But first, he had to survive training. Fort Benning, Georgia. March 1942. Reeves reported for infantry training, expecting to be immediately assigned to sniper school. He'd mentioned his hunting background, his marksmanship, his experience. The intake officer had nodded and written something down. 3 months later, Reeves was still doing regular infantry drills. I don't understand, he told Lieutenant Harrison, his company commander. I can outshoot anyone in this unit. I've been hunting since I was 8. I should be in sniper training. Harrison looked at him with barely concealed irritation. Reeves, every farm boy who shows up here thinks he's Daniel Boone because he shot his daddy's rifle a few times. You know how many men tell me they're expert marksmen? About half the damn company. With respect, sir, I'm different. They all say that too. Reeves was assigned to regular infantry. He spent 6 months learning tactics, formations, assault techniques, all the skills of a frontline soldier. Skills he didn't want and didn't think he needed. In September 1942, he finally got his chance. The battalion was conducting marksmanship qualifications. Standard military procedure: fire at targets from set distances, score points based on accuracy. Reeves had been waiting for this moment. He scored perfect marks at every distance. The range officer, a grizzled sergeant named Walsh, watched him carefully. "You ever done this before, Reeves?" "Every day for 15 years, Sergeant. Just with different targets." Walsh put him through additional tests: moving targets, varying distances, wind conditions, dim light. Reeves hit everything. 2 weeks later, he was transferred to sniper training. "Congratulations," Lieutenant Harrison told him, not sounding particularly pleased. "Try not to get yourself killed showing off." What Harrison didn't understand, what Reeves was about to prove, was that patience could be just as deadly as speed, and intelligence just as important as accuracy. December 1944. The Ardennes Forest. The German counteroffensive that would become known as the Battle of the Bulge had begun just days earlier. Allied forces were being pushed back across a wide front. Confusion reigned. Units were scattered. Supply lines disrupted. Communications broken. Reeves's battalion, the 394th Infantry Regiment, had been ordered to hold a defensive position in a densely forested area near the German border. The specific location remains classified in this fictional account, but the conditions were real enough. Freezing temperatures, heavy snow, limited visibility, and an enemy that knew the terrain better than the Americans did. And German snipers controlled the high ground. "We've lost 18 men in 3 days, Captain Morrison told the assembled squad leaders on the morning of December 16th. 18 men to snipers we can't locate, can't engage, can't eliminate. Every time we try to advance, we lose someone. Every time we send out a patrol, half of them don't come back." The forest was a nightmare. Trees stood so close together that visibility extended maybe 50 yards in most directions. The Germans had spent weeks preparing these positions, building concealed hides in the tree canopy, creating overlapping fields of fire. They could see the Americans coming long before the Americans could see them. What Reeves didn't tell Morrison, what he barely admitted to himself, was that this technique was extraordinarily dangerous. Every time he set up the decoy, there was a chance the Germans would spot him, would figure out the trick, would send a patrol to flank his position. He was gambling that their training, their instincts, their fear of American snipers would override their caution. So far, he was winning that gamble. December 18th, 1944. Reeves refined his technique. He'd noticed that the Germans were most active in the early morning, when light levels were changing, and shadows made it harder to spot concealed positions. So he began each day before dawn, setting up his decoy position while it was still dark, then moving to his firing position and waiting for sunrise. 06:15 hours. First light. He'd positioned the broken lens on a tree stump this time, angled to catch the rising sun from the east. His firing position was behind a cluster of snow-covered bushes 90 yards to the south, with clear lines of sight to 3 different areas where German snipers might be concealed. The light hit the lens. Flash. This time, the response was faster. The Germans had learned that American snipers were active in this sector. They were watching more carefully, reacting more quickly. A rifle shot cracked through the morning air. The bullet hit the tree stump, exactly where a human head would be if someone were actually behind those binoculars. Reeves tracked the shot back to its source, a concealed position in a rocky outcropping, maybe 200 yards away. He could see the barrel of the rifle now, the shooter adjusting his aim for a follow-up shot. Reeves fired first. The German rifle clattered against the rocks. 08:30 hours. Second engagement. Reeves had moved the broken lens to a different position, this time wedged into the fork of a tree branch, about 5 feet off the ground. It looked like a sniper might be perched in the tree, using the elevation for better visibility. 2 German soldiers approached cautiously, trying to flank what they thought was an American sniper position. They moved well, using cover, communicating with hand signals. These were experienced soldiers, not green recruits. But they were looking in the wrong direction. Reeves eliminated both from his concealed position before they realized their mistake. 11:45 hours. Third engagement. This one was different. Reeves had set up the decoy on the edge of a small clearing, but this time no one shot at it. Instead, he heard movement in the forest. Not one soldier, but several. They were trying to surround the position, probably planning to capture or kill what they thought was an isolated American sniper. Reeves counted at least 4 distinct movement patterns. Maybe more. He had to make a choice. Engage from his current position and risk being overrun, or withdraw and let them discover the trick. He chose a third option. Using hand signals, he called over 2 soldiers from the defensive line, Mitchell and a rifleman named Kowalski. Quickly and quietly, he positioned them at different angles around the clearing, each with clear fields of fire. Then he waited for the Germans to spring their trap on an enemy that didn't exist. When the German soldiers finally rushed the decoy position from 3 different directions, they found only broken binoculars on a log, and 3 American riflemen with clear shots. The engagement lasted less than 30 seconds. 7 German soldiers down. By the end of the second day, Reeves had personally accounted for 14 enemy casualties. Combined with the soldiers eliminated in the morning ambush, the total climbed to 21. 21 in 2 days, Morrison said that evening, studying the after-action report. Jesus Christ, Reeves. The entire battalion hasn't gotten those numbers in a month. It's working, sir, but they're going to figure it out eventually. How long do you think we have? Maybe 2 more days, maybe less. They'll start wondering why their snipers aren't coming back. They'll send scouts, patrols. Eventually, someone will spot the decoy without taking the bait. Then we use the time we have. That night, Reeves briefed 3 other snipers in the battalion on the technique. He showed them how to position the broken lens, how to set up firing positions at the correct angle and distance, how to read German responses and predict their movements. The key, he told them, is patience. You set the trap, and you wait. Could be 5 minutes, could be 2 hours. But when they commit, you have maybe 3 seconds to engage. After that, they'll scatter. By the end of the briefing, 2 of the snipers volunteered to try the technique the next day. Reeves wasn't sure if he'd created something brilliant or if he'd just put more American lives at risk. He'd find out tomorrow. December 19th, 1944. 3 different positions, 3 different snipers, 3 broken lenses catching the morning light. Reeves had given pieces of his shattered binoculars to Corporal James Henderson and Private First Class Arthur Green. Each man set up in a different sector of the defensive perimeter, using the same technique Reeves had pioneered. The results were immediate and devastating. 06:55 hours. Henderson's position. A German sniper fired at the decoy from an elevated position in a pine tree. Henderson, concealed in a depression 80 yards away, returned fire. 1 shot, 1 kill. The German fell from the tree, his rifle clattering through the branches. 07:20 hours. Green's position. 2 German soldiers approached what they thought was an American sniper position. Green let them get within 100 yards, close enough that he couldn't miss, then engaged both targets in rapid succession. 07:45 hours. Reeves's position. This was the most elaborate setup yet. Reeves had positioned his decoy on a small ridge that overlooked a frozen stream. The position was exposed, but tempting. Perfect for a sniper who wanted elevated terrain and clear sightlines. The Germans took the bait. But this time, they were more cautious. Reeves watched through his scope as a German patrol, 6 men, moved through the forest toward the decoy position. They weren't rushing. They were using proper tactical spacing, covering each other's movements, checking their flanks. These were not ordinary soldiers. This was probably a dedicated counter-sniper unit. Reeves had anticipated this. He'd set up 3 American riflemen in concealed positions around the approach routes. When he gave the signal, a single whistle, all 3 would open fire simultaneously, creating a devastating crossfire. The German patrol moved closer. 150 yards. 100 yards. 75. The lead soldier raised his hand, signaling a halt. He'd spotted something. Probably the broken binoculars on the ridge. The patrol took defensive positions. Rifles trained on the decoy. Reeves whistled. The crossfire erupted from 3 directions. The German patrol never had a chance. In less than 20 seconds, all 6 soldiers were down. Silence returned to the forest. Reeves and his team waited another 10 minutes, watching for reinforcements or follow-up patrols. None came. Slowly, carefully, they withdrew to the defensive perimeter. By mid-afternoon, the 3 American snipers compared results. Henderson, 4 confirmed eliminations. Green, 3 confirmed eliminations. Reeves, 8 confirmed eliminations, including the counter-sniper patrol. 15 more in a single day. The cumulative total was now 36 enemy casualties in 3 days, but the Germans were learning. That evening, Reeves noticed something in the forest. Movement patterns had changed. German patrols were more cautious, spending more time observing before committing to action. They were sweeping wider areas before approaching suspected sniper positions. "They're adapting," Reeves told Morrison. "They know something's wrong. They're not sure what yet, but they're getting smarter." "Will the technique still work tomorrow?" "Maybe, but it's getting more dangerous. They're going to start sending larger patrols. Maybe bring in artillery to suppress suspected sniper positions before approaching." "One more day," Morrison said. "Give me 1 more day, and then we're pulling you back. The battalion's got orders to advance on the 21st. We need these woods clear of snipers before then." Reeves nodded. 1 more day. That night, he cleaned his rifle, checked his ammunition, and tried not to think about the 27 men he'd killed in 3 days. 27 Germans who'd been alive on December 16th and were dead now because of a piece of broken glass and his ability to remain patient. He told himself they were enemy soldiers. They would have killed Americans if given the chance. This was war, and war meant killing or being killed. But late at night, in the cold darkness of his foxhole, he wondered if those German soldiers had families back home. Wives, children, fathers who'd taught them to hunt in German forests the same way his father had taught him in Montana. Then he remembered the 18 Americans who'd been killed before he started his campaign. The friends who died because German snipers controlled these woods. Tomorrow, he'd set up the broken lens 1 more time, and he'd finish what he'd started. December 20th, 1944. The last day. Reeves woke at 0400 hours, 2 hours before dawn. He'd barely slept. The temperature had dropped to 15 degrees below zero, and even with every piece of clothing he owned layered on his body, the cold seeped through to his bones. He gathered his gear in darkness. Rifle, ammunition, the broken binoculars that had become his most valuable tool, a canteen of water that had frozen solid hours ago, and a small piece of bread that was so hard he could barely bite through it. Henderson and Green joined him at the perimeter. "Last day," Henderson said quietly. "We going to make it count?" "We're going to be smart," Reeves corrected. "They know something's wrong now. They're going to be careful, suspicious. We push too hard. We're going to lose someone." They split up, each heading to different sectors of the defensive line. Reeves chose a position he hadn't used before, a small valley where a frozen stream cut through the forest. The terrain funneled movement patterns, which meant German patrols would have to pass through predictable choke points if they wanted to approach from the east. He set up the broken lens on a fallen log near the stream, angled to catch the rising sun. Then he moved 200 yards downstream, finding a concealed position behind a cluster of rocks and snow-covered branches. And he waited. 0630 hours. Dawn. The light came slowly, turning the sky from black to gray to pale blue. Snow began to fall again, light flakes that drifted through the trees and settled on the frozen stream. The broken lens caught the first rays of sunlight. Flash. Reeves watched through his scope, breathing slowly, conserving energy. He'd been in position for over 2 hours now, and the cold was starting to affect his concentration. His fingers felt clumsy on the trigger. His eyes wanted to close. Stay focused. Stay alert. Movement. 220 yards away, slightly uphill from the stream. A German soldier moving carefully through the trees, rifle at the ready. But he wasn't approaching the decoy. He was watching it from a distance, studying the position. Smart. They were getting smarter. The soldier raised his hand, signaling to someone Reeves couldn't see. 2 more German soldiers appeared, flanking the first. They spread out, creating a wide arc around the decoy position. They were going to surround it before committing. Reeves had to make a decision. Engage now, while he had clear shots at isolated targets, or wait and see if more Germans revealed themselves. He waited. 3 more soldiers appeared. Then 2 more. The Germans were committing significant resources to what they thought was a single American sniper position. 8 German soldiers now, moving in a coordinated pattern through the forest. Reeves couldn't take all 8, not alone, not without backup. He gave the signal. 3 sharp whistles. From 2 different positions, Henderson and Green opened fire. Their shots echoed through the valley, striking 2 German soldiers who'd been moving toward the decoy from the south. The remaining 6 Germans immediately took cover, scanning the trees for the source of the gunfire. But they were looking in the wrong direction. Reeves engaged from his position downstream. 1 shot, 1 German soldier down. 2nd shot, another target eliminated. The remaining 4 Germans realized they were caught in a crossfire. They tried to withdraw, moving back toward their own lines. Henderson and Green fired again. 2 more Germans fell. The last 2 German soldiers ran, abandoning their careful tactics in favor of survival. Reeves let them go. 09:15 hours. 2nd engagement. This time, the Germans changed tactics completely. Instead of sending soldiers to investigate the decoy position, they called in mortar fire. Reeves watched from a safe distance as shells exploded around the broken binoculars, destroying the log where he'd placed them and churning up the frozen ground. Smart. They decided it was safer to eliminate the suspected sniper position with indirect fire rather than risk more casualties. But Reeves had anticipated this. He had 3 more decoy positions already prepared, each with pieces of broken glass positioned to catch the light. As soon as the mortar fire stopped, he activated the 2nd decoy, a position 500 yards to the north. Flash. The Germans saw the new glint of light and realized they'd been shelling an empty position. Reeves could hear shouting in the distance, officers barking orders, soldiers scrambling to reposition. They were frustrated now, angry, making mistakes. A German patrol rushed toward the new decoy position, moving faster than they should, breaking tactical discipline in their urgency to finally eliminate this phantom sniper who'd been killing their comrades for days. Reeves was waiting in ambush. 4 more German soldiers down before they even realized they were under fire. 13:30 hours. Final engagement. The Germans made one last attempt. A full platoon, at least 20 soldiers, advanced toward the American defensive line, supported by machine gun fire and mortar strikes. This wasn't a counter-sniper operation anymore. This was a full assault, designed to push through the American position, regardless of casualties. Reeves found a position with good elevation and began engaging targets methodically. One shot every 15 seconds. Each shot carefully aimed, each target selected for maximum impact. Officers first, then machine gun crews, then soldiers who were directing the assault. He fired 12 shots in 3 minutes. 11 hits. The German assault faltered, then broke completely as soldiers realized they were being picked off by an unseen marksman. They withdrew in disorder, leaving their dead behind. By 1400 hours, the forest was quiet again. Reeves, Henderson, and Green met back at the defensive perimeter. They were exhausted, frozen, running on adrenaline and coffee that tasted like mud. "How many?" Morrison asked. They counted casualties carefully, cross-referencing observations and eliminating duplicates. Day 4 totals. Reeves, 15 confirmed. Henderson, 6 confirmed. Green, 6 confirmed. 27 more enemy casualties in a single day. 4-day cumulative total. 63 German soldiers eliminated through the use of the broken lens technique. Morrison stared at the numbers. 63, in 4 days, with 3 snipers and a piece of broken glass. And patience, Reeves added quietly. Mostly patience. That night, the battalion received orders to advance at dawn. Intelligence reports indicated that German forces in the sector had pulled back to more defensible positions, demoralized by unexpectedly heavy casualties and unable to maintain control of the forest. The woods that had been a death trap 4 days ago were now clear enough for American troops to advance. Reeves sat in his foxhole, cleaning his rifle for what felt like the 1,000th time, and thought about the 63 men he'd helped kill. 63 Germans who'd woken up on December 17th expecting to fight a defensive battle from secure positions, and who'd died because they'd been trained to shoot at the glint of scope lenses. "You all right?" Mitchell asked, climbing into the foxhole to share the watch. "Yeah, just tired." "You know what you did out there was incredible, right? You probably saved dozens of our guys." "Maybe." "Definitely. Captain Morrison's putting you in for a medal." Reeves shrugged. "I just used what I had. Broken binoculars. Good position. Time to think." "Most guys would have thrown those binoculars away." "Yeah, I guess I'm not most guys." They sat in silence for a while, watching the dark forest and listening to the wind move through the frozen trees. "What are you going to do after the war?" Mitchell asked. "Go back to Montana. Hunt elk. Try to forget about all this." "You think you'll be able to forget?" Reeves looked at the younger soldier. "No, probably not, but I'm going to try anyway." What Reeves couldn't know that night, what none of them could know, was that the broken lens technique would be documented in military after-action reports, studied in sniper training courses, and taught as an example of tactical improvisation for decades to come. But that would come later. For now, there was only the cold, the darkness, and the knowledge that tomorrow they would advance into territory that had been bought with 63 enemy lives and 1 piece of broken glass. The numbers, when analyzed coldly, tell a story of unprecedented efficiency. 63 confirmed enemy casualties in 96 hours of operations. That's an average of 15.75 eliminations per day, or 1 enemy soldier killed approximately every 6 hours around the clock. For comparison, the average sniper effectiveness rate in World War II was roughly 3 to 5 confirmed kills per week for active snipers in combat zones. Reeves and his 2-man team had achieved in 4 days what typically took a month or more, but the numbers tell only part of the story. The psychological impact on German forces was far greater than the casualties themselves. German soldiers in the sector reported, in interrogations conducted after the war for this fictional narrative, a pervasive fear of moving during daylight hours, a reluctance to approach any position that might conceal an American sniper, and a growing belief that the Americans had deployed specialized hunter-killer teams equipped with advanced optical equipment. None of it was true, of course. It was one sergeant from Montana with broken binoculars and a lot of patience. The German command, trying to understand what was happening, initially assumed the Americans had brought in a specialized sniper unit, perhaps British commandos or Soviet advisors who'd learned their craft in Stalingrad. They diverted resources to counter this perceived threat, pulling soldiers from other sectors to reinforce the forest positions. This, in turn, weakened German defenses elsewhere, allowing American forces to advance more easily on adjacent sectors. The breakdown by day reveals the evolution of the technique. Day 1, December 17th. 5 confirmed eliminations, all from single engagements using the basic decoy technique. Germans responded instinctively to perceived scope glint. Day 2, December 18th. 16 confirmed eliminations. Introduction of the ambush variant, where multiple American riflemen were positioned to exploit German attempts to flank the decoy position. Day 3, December 19th. 15 confirmed eliminations. Expansion of the technique to 3 simultaneous positions. Germans began adapting tactics, but remained vulnerable to the core deception. Day 4, December 20th. 27 confirmed eliminations. Germans attempted multiple countermeasures, including mortar strikes and platoon-strength assaults, but the fundamental effectiveness of the decoy technique persisted. The accuracy rate was also remarkable. Reeves personally fired 48 shots over the 4-day period and recorded 44 confirmed hits, an accuracy rate of 91.7% under field conditions, in freezing weather, against targets that were often moving or partially concealed. Henderson and Green, using the same technique, achieved combined accuracy rates of approximately 85%. These numbers would be impressive on a rifle range in ideal conditions. In combat, in sub-zero temperatures, against an enemy that was actively trying to kill them, they were extraordinary. But perhaps the most telling statistic is this: 0 American casualties during the 4-day operation. Not one soldier involved in the broken lens technique was killed or seriously wounded. The Germans, fixated on the decoy positions, never successfully located the actual firing positions before it was too late. It was, by any objective measure, one of the most lopsided tactical engagements of the war. Captain Morrison filed his after-action report on December 22, 1944. The report, running to 17 pages of detailed tactical analysis, documented the broken lens technique, its development, and its results. Morrison concluded with a recommendation that Sergeant Daniel Reeves be awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for extraordinary heroism in combat. The award was approved in February 1945. The ceremony took place in a muddy field somewhere in Germany, with most of the battalion assembled in formation. A colonel from division headquarters, a man Reeves had never met and would never see again, read the citation aloud while snow fell around them. For extraordinary heroism in connection with military operations against an armed enemy. Sergeant Daniel Reeves, through tactical innovation and exceptional marksmanship, eliminated 63 enemy combatants over a 4-day period, enabling friendly forces to advance through heavily contested terrain. His actions reflect the highest traditions of military service and bring great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army. The colonel pinned the medal to Reeves's uniform jacket. "Congratulations, Sergeant. Hell of a piece of work." "Thank you, sir." I read Morrison's report. "The broken binoculars thing? That was your idea?" "Yes, sir." "Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. We're going to be teaching this at the infantry school after the war." Reeves didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. The ceremony lasted 10 minutes. Then, the battalion went back to the war. Reeves continued serving as a sniper through the remainder of the European campaign. He participated in the crossing of the Rhine, the advance into Germany, and the final weeks before the surrender. His official tally by war's end was 97 confirmed enemy casualties, making him one of the most effective American snipers of the war in this fictional account. But he never forgot those 4 days in December. After the war ended, Reeves returned to Montana. He bought a small cabin in the mountains, 30 miles from the nearest town. He worked as a hunting guide again, taking tourists into the wilderness to track elk and deer. He never told his clients that he'd been a sniper. He never mentioned the war unless someone asked directly. And he never, ever talked about the broken lens technique. Some things, he told a reporter in 1963, in one of the few interviews he ever gave, are better left in the past. I did what I had to do. A lot of men did a lot more. I came home. That's enough. He died in 1989 at the age of 70 of natural causes. At his funeral, 3 elderly men showed up unannounced. Henderson, Green, and Mitchell, the soldiers who'd fought alongside him in those frozen December woods 45 years earlier. They didn't say much. They stood at the grave, saluted, and left. The broken binoculars, or what remained of them, were donated to a military museum in 1995 by Reeves's daughter. They sit now in a glass case with a small plaque that reads, "Improvised Decoy Device, Battle of the Bulge, December 1944. Most visitors walk past without stopping. Those who do stop rarely understand what they're looking at. The Battle of the Bulge was Germany's last major offensive operation of World War II. Launched on December 16, 1944, it was designed to split Allied forces, capture the port of Antwerp, and potentially force a negotiated peace. It failed. But in the early days, the German offensive achieved significant tactical success. Allied units were scattered, communication lines broken, supply routes disrupted. Small unit actions, like the defensive stand by Reeves's battalion, became crucial in slowing the German advance and buying time for reinforcements to arrive. The sniper war in the forests of the Ardennes was particularly brutal. Visibility was often measured in yards rather than miles. Traditional tactics, advancing in formation, using fire and maneuver, were nearly impossible in the dense terrain. Individual soldiers, armed with good rifles and better patience, could hold up entire platoons. German snipers, drawing on years of experience on the Eastern Front, were initially dominant in this environment. American forces, many of whom had never fought in such conditions, suffered heavy casualties. The broken lens technique, fictional though it is in this account, represents the kind of tactical innovation that often emerges from desperate circumstances. When conventional methods fail, soldiers improvise. They adapt. They find solutions using whatever materials are available. Sometimes those solutions are crude. Sometimes they're brilliant. And sometimes, as in this story, they're both. The U.S. military has a long tradition of studying tactical innovations that emerge from combat. After-action reports are collected, analyzed, and distributed to training commands. Successful techniques are documented and taught to new soldiers. If the broken lens technique had actually existed, it would have been incorporated into sniper training doctrine within months. Instructors at Fort Benning would have taught it. Manuals would have documented it. Future generations of snipers would have learned it as standard procedure. Because in war, innovation isn't just encouraged, it's necessary for survival. The question isn't whether soldiers will improvise. The question is whether their improvisation will be effective enough to matter. In this fictional account, Reeves's improvisation mattered tremendously. What did the German soldiers experience during those 4 days? Reconstructing their perspective, even in fiction, requires understanding their tactical situation and psychological state. By December 1944, German forces on the Western Front were under tremendous pressure. The Normandy invasion had succeeded. Allied forces had liberated France and were advancing toward Germany itself. The Eastern Front was collapsing as Soviet forces pushed westward. The war was clearly lost, though few German soldiers would have admitted this openly. In the Ardennes forest, German units were ordered to hold defensive positions and delay American advances as long as possible. Their snipers, many of them veterans of the Eastern Front, were positioned in concealed hides throughout the forest, with orders to inflict maximum casualties on advancing American forces. For the first few days, the German snipers were highly effective. They controlled key terrain, understood the forest better than the Americans, and operated with the confidence of men who'd been killing enemies from concealed positions for years. Then, something changed. Their snipers stopped coming back. At first, German commanders assumed this was normal attrition. Snipers operated alone or in small teams. They took risks. Sometimes they were discovered and killed. This was the nature of the trade, but the losses were too consistent, too frequent, and they all seemed to be happening in the same sector, against the same American unit. German soldiers interviewed after the war, for purposes of this fictional narrative, reported a growing sense of dread. They knew American snipers were active in the area. They knew those snipers were good. But they couldn't understand how the Americans were consistently locating German positions before the Germans could even fire a shot. It was like they could see through the trees. One German soldier supposedly recalled in a fictional post-war interview, "We would set up a position, prepare to engage, and before we could fire, there would be a shot from somewhere we hadn't expected. Then another. Then silence." Another German soldier, in this fictional account, described the psychological impact. You couldn't trust anything. A glint of light, a shadow, a shape that might be a man or might be a tree stump. Any of it could get you killed. So you hesitated. And hesitation in combat is fatal. The German command tried various countermeasures. They sent larger patrols. They used mortar strikes to suppress suspected sniper positions before approaching. They rotated soldiers more frequently to prevent exhaustion and loss of alertness. None of it worked consistently. By December 20th, German forces in that sector had effectively lost control of the forest. They could still defend fixed positions, but they could no longer conduct active patrols or offensive operations. The cost in lives and in morale was too high. When the American battalion advanced on December 21st, German resistance was minimal. Many units had already withdrawn to more defensible positions, several miles to the east. The forest, which had been a fortress 4 days earlier, was now empty of enemy forces. One German officer, in his post-war debriefing for this fictional story, was asked what had happened. His answer was simple. "We encountered something we couldn't counter. Sometimes in war, that's enough to lose a battle." If you're enjoying this incredible story of tactical innovation and battlefield improvisation, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. We bring you the most detailed and inspiring military history stories, both real and fictional, every week. Now let's see how this technique influenced future sniper doctrine and why it matters today. The broken lens technique in this fictional account became a case study in tactical deception. The principle behind it was simple. Make the enemy reveal himself by giving him a target he can't resist. Snipers are trained to watch for scope glint, that telltale flash of reflected light that betrays a hidden shooter's position. That training becomes instinct. Instinct becomes reflex. And reflex can be exploited. Military theorists have long understood that the best deceptions are those that work with, rather than against, an enemy's training and expectations. If you know what your enemy is looking for, you can give him exactly that in the wrong place. In sniper warfare, this principle has been applied in various ways throughout history. Dummy positions, false muzzle flashes, recorded gunshots, and optical decoys have all been used to draw out enemy snipers and reveal their positions. But the broken lens technique, again, fictional though it is, represents something more elegant than simple deception. It's a psychological warfare at the individual level. Each time a German sniper fired at the decoy and was killed moments later, every other German sniper in the area learned a terrible lesson. Trust nothing. When soldiers can't trust their observations, can't trust their training, can't trust their instincts, They become paralyzed by doubt. They hesitate. They second guess. They make mistakes. And in combat, mistakes are often fatal. Modern military forces still teach deception techniques to snipers and special operations units. The specific tactics have evolved. Drones, thermal imaging, and advanced optics have changed the battlefield. But the underlying principles remain the same. Know your enemy. Understand his training. Exploit his expectations. Create doubt. Force mistakes. Maintain the initiative. These principles, which Reeves supposedly demonstrated in those 4 December days, are as relevant today as they were in 1944. But beneath the tactics, beneath the numbers, beneath the analysis and the doctrine, there were human beings. 63 German soldiers who died in those forests. 63 men who had families, histories, hopes, fears. Men who'd been drafted into a war they might not have believed in. Fighting for a regime most of them probably didn't support. Trying simply to survive until they could go home. Reeves understood this. In that fictional 1963 interview, the reporter asked him, "Do you ever think about the men you killed?" Reeves was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Every day. Every single day." "Do you regret it?" "Ooh. No, but I think about it. They were doing their job. I was doing mine. They would have killed Americans if I hadn't killed them first. That's war. But that doesn't mean I've forgotten them." "What do you remember?" "Specific things. The way one man fell from a tree. The sound another made when he was hit. Small details. I remember that they were people, not just targets. I remember that each one of them was someone's son. Maybe someone's father or brother. I remember that I took that away from them. Some people would call you a hero. Some people are wrong. I was just a soldier doing a job. The heroes are the ones who didn't come home." This moral complexity, this acknowledgement that killing, even in war, even for good reasons, carries a weight, is something that fictional accounts don't always explore. War is not a game. It's not a sport. It's not an opportunity for glory. It's a tragedy where young men kill other young men because old men decided to start a conflict. Reeves survived the war. 97 men he killed did not. He lived to be 70. They never got that chance. The broken lens technique, for all its tactical brilliance, was still fundamentally about killing human beings more efficiently. That's the truth that can't be avoided. That's the weight that soldiers carry home with them. And that's why, despite the medals and the recognition and the case studies and tactical doctrine, Reeves chose to live the rest of his life in a cabin in the mountains, far from other people, spending his days in the same forests where he'd learned to hunt as a child. Some burdens can't be put down. Some weights can never be lifted. You can only learn to carry them. They called him the Ghost of the Ardennes. They said he could kill you before you even knew he was there. They said he had eyes like a hawk and patience like a stone. Then they learned about the broken lens. Then they learned it wasn't magic or supernatural ability. Then they learned it was just intelligence, creativity, and ruthless efficiency. 63 German soldiers in 4 days. 63 lives ended because of broken binoculars and one man's understanding of how to exploit human instinct. 63 families who received telegrams or visited by uniformed officers telling them their son, their brother, their father wasn't coming home. 0 American casualties during the operation. 0 friendly losses due to the tactical innovation that changed the course of a battle. 0 chance that the forest would remain in German hands once Reeves and his team demonstrated how vulnerable those positions actually were. This story, fictional though it is, reminds us of something important about warfare, about innovation, about the human capacity for adaptation under pressure. Sometimes the most effective weapon isn't the biggest gun or the most advanced technology. Sometimes it's just a broken piece of glass and the intelligence to use it correctly. Sometimes victory comes not from overwhelming force, but from making your enemy defeat himself. The German snipers in the Ardennes forest were skilled, experienced, well-positioned. They had every advantage except one. They didn't know they were hunting a man who thought differently, who saw their training as a vulnerability rather than a strength, who understood that the best way to win a sniper duel is to never let your enemy know where you actually are. Captain Morrison was right in his after-action report when he supposedly wrote, "Sometimes it's not a gun, but a piece of broken glass that changes the fate of a battle." But he could have gone further. Sometimes it's not weapons that win wars, but ideas. Sometimes it's not firepower that matters, but intelligence. Sometimes it's not the soldier with the best equipment who survives, but the soldier who can think clearly under pressure and turn disadvantage into advantage. Daniel Reeves, fictional character though he is, represents something that's very real about the soldiers who fight wars. They adapt, they improvise, they find ways to survive and to accomplish their missions using whatever resources are available. They turn broken equipment into tactical advantages. They turn fear into focus. They turn desperation into innovation. And sometimes, in those moments of creative problem solving under pressure, they change the outcome of battles, save lives, and demonstrate the resilience of the human spirit when faced with impossible circumstances. The broken lens technique didn't exist. Sergeant Daniel Reeves didn't exist. Those 63 German casualties in 4 days didn't happen. But the principle behind the story, that intelligence and creativity can be just as deadly as firepower, that understanding your enemy's psychology can give you an insurmountable advantage, that sometimes the simplest ideas are the most effective. That principle is absolutely real, and it's been demonstrated countless times, in countless wars, by countless soldiers who faced impossible situations and found improbable solutions. This is their story too. The story of adaptation, the story of innovation, the story of human beings doing extraordinary things under extraordinary circumstances. The story of how sometimes, when everything else fails, a piece of broken glass and a lot of patience can change everything.